All right, let's talk about something fascinating. A time when a single poem became a powerful political weapon, one that could actually shape the fate of an entire kingdom.
I mean, what if a poem could actually stop a rebellion in its tracks? Sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, right? But back in 1681 England, the kingdom was teetering on the edge of a crisis. And the king's best defense? Well, it wasn't his army, it was his poet.
So, before we get to the poem itself, we need to set the stage. You have to understand the incredibly high stakes political drama that was unfolding. So, what was the big deal? Well, the problem was this: King Charles II didn't have a legitimate heir, and this created a massive crisis over who should take the throne next. You had two main contenders: his son, the Duke of Monmouth, who was super popular but illegitimate and Protestant, and then you had his brother, James, who was the legitimate heir, but he was Catholic, which was a huge problem for a lot of people. The whole country was basically split in two. You had the Whig Party, and they were all in for the popular Protestant son, Monmouth. And then you had the Tory Party, who backed the king's brother, James, because, hey, he was the legitimate heir. It was a total powder keg, just waiting to explode. So, with public opinion turning against his brother, the king needed to fight back. He needed a weapon, and he found the perfect one in his poet laureate, a guy named John Dryden. Dryden's mission basically was to write a piece of masterful propaganda. He had to defend the king and totally discredit his enemies. And the timing of this poem was no accident. It was released specifically to influence the trial of the leader of the opposition, the Earl of Shaftesbury. Talk about strategic. And Dryden's solution, it was absolutely genius. See, he couldn't just come out and attack these powerful political figures directly, so instead, he used a clever analogy. He took a famous story from the Old Testament, one that pretty much everyone in England would know, about King David and his rebellious son Absalom. And he used that story as a kind of code to talk about everything that was happening in the country.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. Let's crack this code and see who these biblical figures really are. It's basically a direct one-to-one map. King Charles II, he's the wise King David. His handsome, ambitious son, Monmouth, that's the rebellious Absalom. And the main villain, the manipulative advisor, Achitophel, well, that's a stand-in for the Earl of Shaftesbury, the king's biggest political rival. So let's start with the king. Dryden had a bit of a PR problem on his hands. King Charles II was pretty famous for having a lot of mistresses and, well, a lot of illegitimate kids. How do you spin that in a positive way?
This is where Dryden gets really clever. He sets the poem in ancient biblical times. By doing that, he reframes the king's affairs. It's not a scandal, oh no, it's a sign of his heroic, almost godlike power. It's an amazing move. He takes what everyone sees as a weakness and turns it into a strength, which is perfect for a king who believed he ruled by divine right.
But honestly, the real masterstroke here is how Dryden goes after the king's enemies, especially how he frames the relationship between the king's son and that scheming politician. Yeah, this quote just says it all. Dryden paints Monmouth, or Absalom, as this brave hero, beloved by the people. But he's also just a tool. He's a pawn in a much bigger, more cynical game. So you see the strategy, right? It's brilliant. The poem can be kind of sympathetic to the king's son. He's just young, naive, easily manipulated, while dumping all of the blame for this whole mess squarely on the shoulders of the king's #1 political enemy, Shaftesbury. And it wasn't just about the characters. Dryden had a whole bag of poetic tricks he used to make sure his attacks really hit home. First up, just straight up ridicule. He describes Achitophel, remember that's Shaftesbury, as having a pygmy body. This was a classic move back then. The idea was to connect a twisted body with a twisted soul. It's a low blow, but it's effective. Another trick? Let's just say Dryden wasn't afraid to play a little fast and loose with the facts to make his point. So in the poem, he accuses Achitophel of breaking this really important treaty called the Triple Bond. He basically says Shaftesbury sold out the country to foreign powers. But here's the wild part. That's not what happened at all. In real life, the person who actually broke that treaty was King Charles II himself. So this is just pure political spin. Dryden took something unpopular the king did and just blamed it on his enemy. Absolutely ruthless. And then there are the inside jokes. Dryden packed the poem with clever puns that his readers at the time would have totally gotten. Did you catch it? The general in general shout isn't just a word, it's a pun. It's a direct reference to General Monk, who was the real-life guy who restored King Charles II to power. For anyone reading this in 1681, that would have been a huge wink-wink, nudge-nudge moment. It's these little details that made the poem so persuasive.
So the big question is, did any of this actually work? And the answer is a big, fat yes.
The poem was a smash hit. It completely reframed the whole political debate and helped swing public opinion back to the king's side. It's just such a powerful reminder that stories, well, they don't just reflect reality. They can actually create it.
And that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's the modern version of Absalom and Achitophel? I mean, where do we see these exact same tactics today, using stories and analogies and even ridicule to shape how we see things? The technology has changed, for sure, but the game is still very much the same.